So thank you for your story, Betty. Now, let me ask you, Dawnyka, a little bit about your story. It's quite a bit different than Betty's story, but
Yes,
it's still a story I'm sure that people want to hear about. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born in the branch, Christ Church, so I've been here all my life. But definitely had to go through my stages and experiences to get my testimony as to where the Lord wanted me and which path I needed to follow. So I came from a plural situation, a plural family, I should say. My mother's the third mom. I have 19 brothers and sisters. So I was born in a large family, and I think that opened up the law of consecration a lot, to what that could mean, because we learned to help one another. And your family wasn't just under your roof, it was in this house or that house. And I think it gave me a good foundation to start on.
So you had a very large family, huh?
That I did.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting growing up with a lot of siblings that you can learn and grow with and fight with and have challenges again with in life. And
oh, it's great when this household of kids are irritating, you can go to the other house and you have best friends over there too. So it's the best of both worlds. I wouldn't trade those memories and experiences for anything.
Awesome. So just a little bit of context. Dawnyka and I have known each other since
6.
I can't. I'm very young, so I can't even remember not knowing her.
Yeah.
We were neighbors
for a long time.
For years.
Yeah.
So, and we've both moved over the years, different places, but we've remained friends the whole time, and just have grown, developed a relationship. So I really appreciate
me too.
My friendship with you.
It's been a good one.
So as you grew in the branch, and as you learned, you had to learn and get your own testimony. How did that transition happen for you?
I had some experiences growing up that were hard, because that's life. And so by the time I was 13, I did not want to have anything to do with the branch, plural marriage, or just anything. I did want God. I never let go of God. And I had been praying in anger. I was very angry, very hurt. And I remember walking down the road where we lived, and we have Gerald Sr.'s, which we call him Grandpa. His wife, Faye, lived along that road. And it seemed like whenever I was praying about something, my answers would come more often than not as I passed that house. So
wow.
He'd already passed away, but she still lived there, and she was definitely a grandmother to everyone that knew her, whether she knew them for 2 weeks or 7 years or 28 years. She was grandmother as soon as you met her. That was her personality. I very much appreciate her example in my life. I feel like I really pulled a lot from her.
I called her grandma.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just this little thing, and I try to remember how old she would have been at the time, but
I can't even remember. I don't know.
To me, as
everybody's
a little kid,
always a certain age, and they don't ever go up or down.
Yeah, I felt like she was ancient. Like, wow, this wise older woman. Anyway, just being this little kid. So
yeah, I agree. She definitely had that persona about her of a grandmotherly love to just give, especially to children. I think we all benefited greatly from that.
Kind of like Betty here.
Yeah.
We appreciate you being grandma too.
I love being grandma. These wonderful children, and One of the things that I love about it is the older siblings love to cart the babies around.
Oh yeah, of their
Yes.
little sisters and brothers.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and cousins and half sisters and half brothers.
Nieces and
And,
nephews.
yeah, it's just it's fun to watch that.
Right.
Mm.
It is, and you can just tell that there's a genuine love
Mhm.
in their family. So I'm not saying that you don't find that other places too, but it's just nice to see that people love each other and you want to work together. So, and it's not all peaches and cream around here. We have our challenges too. So
I think there would be something wrong if we didn't.
we definitely have challenges.
We're working on it, and that's the good part.
So you were saying as you were walking down the road, you would get answers as you would pass Grandma Faith's house.
Yes.
And just for context, she is the wife of
The founder.
of the. So Gerald Sr. passed away, but she was still living for quite a few years after he had passed away. And Gerald Sr. Was the prophet that she was married to. For some context.
Yeah. And I think that there was just a spirit that he would draw there. But that was often where I would get answers. And anyways, I had been praying, and again, more in anger and frustration about plural marriage and about the gospel, really. I just didn't really want to have anything to do with anything. I just wanted to drop it all and go have that wonderful life that's out there that just had to be perfect because it was greener on the other side of the fence.
I'm sure you're not the only one that felt that way too.
Probably not, but anyways, as I was walking past Grandma Faye's house one day, I don't know exactly what you would call it, but I just had sort of a vision that I don't know what you would call it.
Could be a waking vision.
Yeah,
maybe?
just something. And I had a dream, well, not really a dream because I was awake and I was standing on the road, but I just saw this scene open up in front of me, and it was of the Preexistence. And just a quick rundown of it, I saw each of us coming, well, we were all up there together. I saw the war, I saw the fighting, the contention. I also saw the love and the unity that each group had towards one another. I think the part that really got to me the most was when, after the war and people were walking away with the adversary and Satan, and that they had chose that side, the scene had kind of changed, and there were, go back just a little bit, each of us that had been born, we each had a bubble, kind of like, when you blow up the bubbles and the sun hits them, you can see all these little,
like rainbows.
yeah,
and
just
stuff.
super pretty. And each male and female unit was in that, and they had this warm bubble that was around them.
So it was like a spiritual bubble, might like call it.
It kind of like it was an orb, but it just completely surrounded them, and it literally was a bubble.
It's called. We have an aura around each person, and maybe that's what you were seeing.
I don't really know. This was but it was it was answers for me. But as the war had ended, it was like some people had already gone back to the bubbles, and I just call them bubbles because that's what they were. But I remember seeing a lot of people turn. Well, were watching their fellow friends, companions, just these loved ones. They were all loved ones away with Satan, and they kind of looked up to Father in heaven, and they said, "What do we do?" But it wasn't with words. It was just, you could just feel that that's what they were saying. And he so lovingly said, "It's okay. We knew this would be, and this is part of the plan." And then all of those that were in their bubbles, their spouses kind of just not really absorbed, but just were transported to them. And then there were ones that their spouses, that their mates had left, and they said, well, what about us? And he said again, this is the plan.
There's a plan for you, right?
Yeah. And I remember how beautiful it was when a woman would come to a bubble which had a man and a woman, or two women, or whatever it was. Each time that bubble would grow bigger and more colorful and more brilliant and bright.
Oh, wow.
And there were these orb bubbles that had just had a single man or just a single woman, that they had a partner come that they had agreed to. You know, it's like, I don't know if it was agreed to, but it was like a backup plan in case, and or the Lord knew. And
The Lord's plan, He knew, right?
yeah, but I think it gave me a lot of hope. And it was, to me, that it was my biggest testimony of plural marriage, was to see that God had a plan, and that we actually had arranged this in heaven, knowing that we would have.
Wow.
And I love that in the center of each was Christ.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was a man and one wife, two wives, three wives, whatever it was. And this is something that I have people tell me it's not true, but that's okay. This is my testimony, was when he was with her. I mean, each one that came into that bubble were mates, were now soulmates. He was her, and her soulmate. But she was also her soulmate, and her soulmate, and her soulmate. They were mated together in heaven. And it makes me think of that, I'm not sure if it's a scripture, but it says, what God puts together, let no man put asunder.
Mm-hmm.
And God did put it together. So it doesn't have to be on the black and white. This is exactly how it can be in order to fit our persona and it's God did it this way.
That's a beautiful story, Dawnyka. I'm
It is.
glad I haven't heard it before.
Yeah.
I'm glad you gave that story.
So that was a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with us. So that was when you were just a teenager, correct?
13.
You were 13 years old. That would be a powerful experience for a 13-year-old to
It
have.
changed my views. I stopped being angry so much. Didn't mean it fixed it all, but
Right. No, you still had some feelings and you still had to learn, right?
Well, and I still had to discover if this was my path, because I'm the granddaughter of Owen Allred, who was at the time the leader of the AUB.
Okay.
I always say it wrong. Something brethren.
United Apostolic
Yep,
Brother?
that one.
Okay.
And so I often, when we would go visit grandma or grandpa, I saw what they had. And I was like, well, they're bigger and they have things that we don't. So there has to be more truth here, because they're doing way better off. But I think I was 14 at the time. We're still trying to pinpoint the date that this happened, but I was at my grandmother's for a while, and we ended up attending meeting. And he came down to Cedar City at the time.
He being
Grandpa Owen Allred.
Okay, your Grandpa Owen.
Yeah, and I had been at this time again. This was about a year later, so I was good with plural marriage now, but I was trying to find the right church, and I'd narrowed it down to the AUB and the branch as to where did God want me between these two.
Okay.
And so I was actually heavily leaning toward the AUB because they had more to offer. They were bigger. They had more programs, more things. And I remember going to a meeting, and he lived in northern Utah, so he did not come to Cedar City very often. So it was actually the only time I'd ever seen him in Cedar at a church meeting that I had been to, that, I didn't attend them all. But there had been some investigators come in from England that had joined the AUB, and they were telling their story of how they obtained their witness to be there, and that was where the Lord wanted them, and that they knew that where they were at was right and true for them and everything. And then after they'd all told their testimony, other existing members got up and said how they knew that work was true, and that Brother Owen was the prophet and had the keys and all these things. And I remember just thinking, okay, this is my testimony. This is my witness. God's giving it to me. This is where I'm supposed to be. And then Grandpa Owen got up, and he just stood there for a minute, and then he said, I'm really grateful for all of your testimonies, and that you all have that testimony that I have the keys. He said, but I don't, because I was never given them. He said, I was asked to I was asked to lead the flock and to not let plural marriage die, to keep it alive. And then he said, I know he said a few more words, but my brain kind of was like, what?
Right.
You just blew all of them out of the water.
All these people just said, hey,
you
he's
contradicted
the
them all.
Oh, yeah, that would be.
That was honest of him.
Yes. And so I often wonder if it was just for me,
Sure.
Because I was in prayer on that so heavily. It definitely left me very confused, and I went home and was praying and praying. I was like, okay, I don't understand. How can this be true and this be true? And my dad ended up calling. He said, the Spirit's just telling me I need to call and talk to you. Can you talk to anything about anything? So I told him everything, and he brought up the different kingdoms, the different levels, the different paths. That not everybody has the same goal, really. Not everybody has the same path. So
we all have the same goal, celestial kingdom.
It depends.
Not
really everybody does.
Well, I guess we should want to have the same goal, I guess we should
not
say.
everyone will be able to handle taking the same path to get there.
True.
And that brings that scripture, in my kingdom there are many mansions. Why would there be many mansions if there was only one spot that had some truth? So there are truths in so many places, and then it just came to what did God want me to do, and but in the long run, it just kept coming back. This is where I was supposed to be, and I'm very grateful for those experiences. It did shake me up a bit, but
So this is when you were a young teenager.
I think I was 14 for that one.
So how did it?
From then, I just knew this is where the Lord wanted me. And
may I add something to this?
Yes.
I am so glad that you had that experience when you were a young teenager. Those are starting some of the most difficult years for teenagers.
Yes.
And when a teenager gets their testimony young, they have a lot less problems.
Yes, I agree. Because, for my testimony for Brother Jerry, I also received that in front of Grandma Faye's house.
Yeah?
Yeah, Grandpa Peterson came to me in front of Grandma Faye's house.
Seems to be a theme for
I told you, almost my big answers were in front of Grandma Faye's house. And Grandpa Peterson came to me and told me that he said, you know that Jerry holds the keys.
And he told you that you already knew the answer?
Yeah. I was like, well, I wanted a different answer. But I often say I think that God, I'm one of the most irritating children of God's.
You are?
Yeah. Because when he gives me an answer, I'm a nag. I'm like, will you make sure? Give me another testimony, because maybe that one wasn't really the right one. And so he'll give me testimony after testimony after, witness after witness after witness. And he's probably like, I've given you 20, you're good. But
well, the good thing he's really patient, right?
Yes, very much.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing your testimony and what led you to Christ Church.
Yeah.
So, in the spirit of bearing kind of testimonies, I'd like to share mine with you guys.
Oh, wonderful. I'd love to hear it.
Yes.